Agave syrup is marketed as a diabetic-friendly sweetener. However, it's 70 to 90% fructose, which can actually be worse for insulin resistance than regular sugar. Açaí bowls are considered one of the cleanest breakfasts you can eat, but a typical commercial version contains up to 70 grams of sugar. Kombucha is a daily ritual for a lot of people who are concerned about gut health, but most commercial versions have enough residual sugar to produce a meaningful insulin response. None of these are obvious, but that's the problem. Now, I work with clients with insulin resistance regularly, and one common trend I see is people thinking they're making healthy choices, doing everything right, and still not getting results because of a handful of foods that they never thought to question. So today we're going to be talking about 7 sneaky foods that spike your insulin, and you probably should be limiting if you're insulin resistant. But don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. We're also going to talk about what you can swap them for. Starting off with sports drinks. These sit in a category of foods that have been so successfully marketed around athletic performance that people forget to read what's actually in them. A standard 600 milliliter sports drink has 30 to 40 grams of added sugar, primarily glucose and sucrose. And these are designed to enter your bloodstream rapidly, which yes, for someone who's a high performance athlete, that's what they want, but not if you're someone who's trying to reverse insulin resistance. If you're someone doing a 45-minute gym session, a yoga class, a moderate run, that sugar load is hitting a body that doesn't need it. The insulin response is fast and significant. And because the drink is liquid with no fat, fiber, or protein to slow down absorption, the blood sugar spike is almost identical to drinking a soft drink. And the electrolyte content doesn't offset the insulin response. If electrolytes are your goal, there are far better ways to get them that don't impact your blood sugar and insulin like this. Number 2 is flavored nuts. Now, plain nuts, on the other hand, are one of the best foods for stable blood sugar and insulin sensitivity. They're high fat, minimal protein, and usually low carb. They produce almost no blood sugar response and provide genuine satiety. Flavored nuts are a completely different product. Honey roasted, teriyaki, sweet chili, barbecue. The coating on flavored nuts typically contains sugar, refined starches, and seed oils, enough to meaningfully change the insulin response from the plain version. People will read almonds or cashews on the label and think they're getting the benefits of eating plain nuts. But unfortunately, your body is treating this more like a processed snack. So an easy swap is switch to plain nuts. If you want flavored, add your own seasoning without all the added sugar. Number 3 is kombucha, and this might upset some people. Kombucha sits firmly in the health food category. It's fermented, gut-friendly, and associated with microbiome health. And I will say, the fermentation process does produce beneficial compounds. But here's what most people don't realize. The fermentation process in kombucha starts with a significant sugar load. That sugar feeds the bacteria that produces the fermentation. Unfortunately, commercial kombucha is not fully fermented, which means there's still a meaningful amount of sugar in the final product. Now, a standard commercial kombucha has about 8 to 15 grams of sugar. This isn't the end of the world, but often flavored variations contain even more. So for someone who's insulin resistant and trying to reverse it, this isn't ideal. Homemade kombucha, on the other hand, is fully fermented. It contains less residual sugar. Now, this isn't the same for every kombucha, so read your labels. There are definitely some good brands out there. Number 4 is dried fruit. Now, I am not a hater of fruit, full stop. Anyone who tells you you can't balance your blood sugar, you can't reverse insulin resistance unless you've cut out fruit is lying to you. Whole, unprocessed fruit, yes, it still does have some level of sugar, but it's always going to be a better option than processed food. There's always going to be better and worse choices you can make. So yes, choosing fruit that's lower in sugar, and usually that means reducing the amount of tropical fruit. This is going to be better for your blood sugar and insulin levels. But even if you are having fruit that's higher in sugar, pairing it with protein and fat helps to reduce the blood sugar spike and makes it more insulin resistance friendly. So I don't hate whole fruit, but dried fruit is another story. Dried fruit removes the water. What you're left with is concentrated sugar, and this means it's absorbed by your body more rapidly. A handful of dried mango, raisins, or dates contains the sugar equivalent of multiple pieces of whole fruit in a fraction of the volume, and without the satiety that the whole fruit provides. People eat dried fruit as a health snack and consume far more sugar than they realize because the portion feels small. But a small handful of raisins, for example, has 25 grams of sugar. So if you can, choose whole fruit. Use dry fruit sparingly. Number 5 is coconut sugar. Coconut sugar definitely had a moment a few years ago. It was being promoted as natural, a low GI alternative to regular sugar. However, neither of those statements is true. The glycemic index of coconut sugar is often cited as around 35, compared to regular sugar at 65. But glycemic index measurements are highly variable, and real-world studies show the difference in insulin response between coconut and regular sugar is minimal. Both are predominantly sucrose, the same molecule as table sugar. There are trace amounts of nutrients, but not enough to make a meaningful difference. The natural framing is the most effective marketing piece here. Coconut sugar comes from coconut palm sap and is less processed than refined white sugar, but metabolically, your body handles it almost identically. So coconut sugar, it's not a free pass. And this is a good moment to mention how you can actually see this playing out in your body in real time. Did you know that your blood sugar levels are inversely related to your ketone levels? I talk about measuring your blood glucose using a continuous glucose monitor all the time. But another extremely helpful tool here is a continuous ketone monitor. Because when your blood sugar goes up, your body is using that glucose, and your ketones go down. There's less need for them if there's glucose available. And this can be really fascinating to see in real time. The only way to know what your body specifically is doing is to measure it. And the SciBio KS3 continuous ketone monitor is the one I use personally. It tracks your ketone levels in real time, around the clock, and it connects to an app so you can see exactly what different foods are doing to your metabolic state as it happens. And spoiler alert, most of the foods we're talking about in today's video will drop your ketones because your blood sugar and your insulin is going up. Test it for yourself and let me know your results. I'll put the link to check out SciBio in the description box down below, along with the promo code to save. Food number 6 we mentioned at the start, and that's acai bowls. Acai bowls are one of the most visually compelling health foods in existence. They photograph beautifully. They're associated with wellness culture. And the base ingredient, acai, does contain genuine antioxidants and beneficial compounds. But this isn't the case for most commercial acai bowls. These can actually be a sugar bomb with little protein, maybe a bit of fat, and not a lot of micronutrients otherwise. The acai base is almost always sweetened. This is because unsweetened acai is extremely tart, and most commercial preparations add sugar or sweetened juice to make it more palatable. The granola topping adds refined carbohydrates, and often even more sugar. And then we have the fresh fruit, which, as I said before, on its own, totally fine. But when you pile it on something that's already high in sugar, then yeah, this isn't ideal. A typical acai bowl can contain 50 to 70 grams of sugar in a single meal. That's way more sugar than most people would consciously choose to eat in a sitting. So if you absolutely love acai bowls, make them at home. Choose an unsweetened base, add in a protein powder, add some fat, and choose low sugar fruit as toppings. And finally, food number 7 is agave syrup. And this one frustrates me because it's often sold as diabetic friendly, when really it's anything but. The basis for this claim is that agave has a low glycemic index, meaning it doesn't spike blood glucose as rapidly as regular sugar. And look, that part is technically true. But as I said at the start, agave syrup is 70 to 90% fructose, one of the highest fructose syrups commercially available. Now, fructose has a low glycemic index because it doesn't enter the bloodstream as glucose, but instead it goes almost entirely to the liver, where it's processed and converted to fat, specifically triglycerides, which are then stored as visceral fat. High fructose intake drives liver fat accumulation, raises triglycerides, worsens insulin resistance over time, and contributes to visceral fat in a way that glucose doesn't. So the low GI label, technically true, but functionally, it's misleading. And if you test it using a continuous ketone monitor, even though your blood sugar might not have went up, your ketones will drop. This is definitely not diabetic friendly. It's definitely not good for insulin resistance. If you're looking for a sweetener that's natural and blood sugar friendly, I highly recommend allulose. It's highly underrated and it doesn't get enough credit. So those are the 7 foods that a lot of people will consider healthy, but that might be making your insulin resistance worse. Sports drinks, flavored nuts, kombucha, dried fruit, coconut sugar, acai bowls, and agave syrup. Each one produces a meaningful insulin response, but they're often marketed as healthy. So the fix here is not complicated. Read your labels, know what you're putting inside of your body. Choose whole foods when you can, and make sure that every meal you're eating, every snack you're eating, has enough protein and enough fat. Because again, unless you're a high intensity athlete, You don't want to be getting carbohydrates in isolation. Now, if insulin resistance is something you're actively working on, make sure to check out my Insulin Resistance Playbook series. That's 5 episodes, and it gives you everything you need to know to start reversing it. And if you want to test your own response to any of these foods, I'm going to put the link to the continuous ketone monitor I mentioned in the description box down below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.